Hi, Boise Entrepreneur Week, and welcome back to the studio here live at Trailhead. I am partner at Vinyl and co-chair Nick Krabs of Boise Entrepreneur Week. I'm really excited today to be joined by Chris Jum from Kinetic VC. And you have the distinct honor of being the furthest traveler to come to Boise for this week. So welcome to our beautiful city.
High honor, appreciate it.
Yeah, and so you came from Cincinnati, so
Yep.
Furthest traveler from Cincinnati. So jumping right in, tell me a little bit about you and what you do at Kinetic VC.
Yeah, so Kinetic is an early stage venture capital firm. We do pre-seed, seed deals all across the nation. And my background's in data analytics and high frequency trading.
Okay.
And so what makes us unique kind of plays into that. We've built the first AI bot that sources, analyzes companies, so full process. We use data analytics to analyze companies prior to any sort of human interaction. So we don't look at pitch decks. We don't invest in companies that our AI doesn't like. And you can think about it as just an analyst that any venture fund would have, but instead of them looking at pitch decks and Harvard graduated, 25-year-old, we have a machine that learns over time through all the companies coming through, and he feeds us the deals that he thinks are best. And then we apply a typical venture lens from there, but we look at 10 to 15% of all deals that come through. Wendell is his name.
So I think this is a pretty interesting distinction that for our audience, they should really kind of understand what's unique about Kinetic. So prior to ever having a conversation with a founder that you're potentially going to look at, they go online, they interact with your artificial intelligence, and from there, it kicks out what deals you should be looking at.
Yeah.
Wow, that's super interesting. So talk to me a little bit about what an entrepreneur might experience going through that process.
Yeah, so it's we try to make it as quick and founder friendly as possible. So we like to think about it. Most people take a 30 to 60 minute phone call with the venture capital analyst. Mm-hmm. Our process takes 15 to 20 minutes. So we always try to undercut what would the bare minimum bar be for a typical venture fund. But you can go to our website or just a link directly to our process. And currently we have 5 diligence steps. So Wendell's kind of the platform that we train. We train the machine learning based on ultimate outcomes.
So step one, interact with Wendell.
With Wendell. And really what we're looking for is a mix of team, terms, timing, and technology. So we call it the 4 Ts. We build software all around those 4 verticals of diligence. So in our minds, if we can apply data, quantified methods to analyze and score those parts of diligence, which we know are important, then we feel like we're doing a pretty good job. And so we're always building new tech, but currently 5 steps in a process, it takes 15 to 20 minutes.
So and always the question with any kind of new innovation, as you'd say, in the investing market is what's the performance? So you guys are on fund 2, right? And talk to me about how big each one of your funds are and if they had a specific thesis in each side of it.
Yeah. So this is our first institutional fund.
Okay.
Kinetic had a small angel fund back, started in 2015, 2016. So this is our real first crack at institutional large size fund. So it's a $25 million fund. And it's the first fund where we've used Wendell for screening. So any prior checks, we didn't have the process that we had now.
Okay.
So it's taken 1.5 to 2 years to build the technology, and we've deployed it in market for 2.5 to 3 years.
And I assume because of how you guys are collecting this data, the more people that interact with Wendell trying to get funding from you, the smarter Wendell is getting at understanding what deals to pass along, right?
Yeah, so that's the beauty of it. We've had 6,000 companies go through Wendell, and what we do on the back end is we train the model on outcomes. So real outcomes, acquisitions versus bankruptcies are typically what we're training it on. The tough part about venture and why no one's really done this, while it's really easy in hedge funds and public markets, is the timing on venture deals from the time you make a seed investment to an ultimate exit, the average timeline is 12 to 14 years.
It's quick.
Yeah, it's super quick. And you can't back test because there's no data, very little data on early stage companies. So we're 3 years into this, and we're starting to get some good outcomes on bankruptcies, because that's typically what happens first. Is a startup fails from first funding about 18 months from first funding. And so, of our 6,000 or so companies, we have 800, 900 outcomes, and majority of those are bankruptcies or bad deals in our system.
In your system, yeah. So you're getting some of that early data at least to be able to understand how to predict a bankruptcy from the, and talk to me a little bit how when a founder, because full disclosure, I went through Wendell myself just to see.
I know exactly what you should do at a company.
Yeah, exactly. I had to understand how to fill it out next time, right? But talk to me about how when you get those reports back from Wendell on what deals you should be looking for, what is the typical makeup that really gets put together that makes you guys have to now take a full look at a deal?
So the majority of it is we have verticals we invest in, but the biggest part of the algorithm and our process is all around the team. So if you ask any venture capitalist or read any article about what matters in startups, venture capital, everyone, most people come back to the team. It's the founders, It's the first key employees, it's culture. So we've built some really cool technology and processes around analyzing people and teams. We've worked on this technology for two and a half years with industrial psychologists out of Xavier. And so we know people that go through, one of the diligence models is called Team Print, and we analyze 10 traits about every person that goes through it. And we know exactly what makes up a great CEO, a great CTO. But the best...
And you're usually doing like the entire founding team, right? Or leadership team in a startup, because that makeup could be a little different depending on the type of deal or type of opportunity that you're looking at, right?
Yeah, minimum's 2, so 2 senior, obviously CEO or any founders, but if it's a solo founder, the one key hire, and they don't have to be full-time yet. It's, a lot of this, since we're going early, is contingent upon funding rounds to make key hires. But 2, the more the better, because we do have some analytics in the background that not only measure role fit, but how well the team likely works together and how likely they are to succeed.
Makes sense. Real quick, we have a question from Slack. Thanks for dropping those in Slack. If you're unsure how to do that, go to BoiseEntrepreneurWeek.org, click on the registration button, go through the registration, and you'll get emailed a link to join our community Slack where you can ask live questions during all of our sessions throughout the week. So the question right now is, how is it that venture capitalists who often invest in disruptive technologies haven't disrupted the way they place investments, still doing pitch decks and other antiquated methods?
Oh, that's my favorite question.
Is this a plant? Did you ask someone to ask this question?
I must have. This is a loaded one, but and this is just personal opinion. This isn't, but there's just, when you think about who launches venture capital funds, it's prior founders that have mega exits, or it's really wealthy people from a certain background. There's just a lot of ego and a lot of or it could be someone that had a ton of angel success picking winners. And maybe they did, that's a top decile fund, and it's just ingrained in you that I know best. And you like people that look like you. There's, we talk about all these types of biases that enter the process. Confirmation bias is, if I picked winners in the past, I'll continue to pick them in the future. And it's hard. Coming back to the timeline question, to do this, we're not super confident in what our algorithm's putting out. We feel pretty good and we're on the right direction. But who wants to sign up for a 6 to 8 year project that might be helpful in the future? So those ego and just timelines are probably the 2 that...
And you're trying to weed that out with Wendell a little bit, where you're trying to essentially, pre-vet some of these deals before you then have to take the flawed step of looking at them yourself, right? Which is true of all investment. I know that, the partners at Vinyl, we've certainly looked at a lot of deals the last couple of years and deployed some capital ourselves, and it is a little bit of a crapshoot. I mean, you're basing that off a handful of things. One is your kind of own expertise and what you know. For us, there's a lot of technology experience, and so we can apply that lens to the investments or opportunities that we're looking at. But it still is a flawed process, because when you're getting a pitch deck and you're doing, these quick introductions, even if you go through some kind of due diligence, you're really only getting a sense or a flavor of what's happening with that company. And there's a lot of trust that's required to then make investments into that. So,
Yep.
and for you guys, I mean, it's a lot easier to say no than yes, and you should never be afraid of walking away from some of these deals. And so you guys have a nice little buffer there where something is doing some vetting for you prior to you then taking that step, which I think is really cool. So, kind of the big question that I wanted to ask you is, why are you in Boise? What brought you here to have this conversation with us?
Yep. So about a year ago, we had the pleasure of having Killer Creamery come through our process, the local CPG company, and we ended up investing in Killer Creamery. Through that, I met their CEO, Matt Price, and he's done deals and has always been kind of tinkering and venture.
He's not a deal maker at all, is he?
No. He doesn't like deals. But he's actually come out to Cincinnati, I think 3 or 4 separate times, because he loved the process. And we go deep in all the data we're collecting, data dashboards, the why. He challenges us a lot in what we're doing, and so we just love working with people like that, because we don't know everything. And so he's come out, called 4 times, and we had to return the favor, and this was a good venue to do that. So meeting with them, and ideally we invest in a lot more Boise startups. We love ecosystems that have kind of emerging entrepreneurship bubbles, and maybe don't have a ton of investor capital or funds. And so anywhere where there's a lot of good quality startups and a lack of funding, we want to be kind of the presence and the fund people think of when they go to fund.
Yeah. So for any local entrepreneurs who are curious about going through this process right now and getting a start to have an introduction to you, what should they do right now today?
Go to kinetic.ventures and apply for funding.
And apply for funding.
Yeah,
It's that easy.
It's that easy. And
then-
you'll get one of the big things that we're working on as a company. We built it in-house and had to spin out our tech, and so we go through all of the same growing pains that any startup would. Building technology is super hard, and it's kind of fun going through that process while we're funding people in the same stage with like closed betas, open betas. But we want to build in actionable feedback. And we've started by, if you take Teamprint, the assessment, you get to see your results, like you saw your results. But we're working next few months, some of the output will be likelihood of success. And they're like, do you want to increase your likelihood of success? Do these three, 4 things. And so
you're hoping to give some feedback
Yep.
to the founders after they fill out the form.
Yeah. So ideally in the next few months, you expect that, but you can apply right now.
Awesome. So we have a couple more questions from chat. Does Wendell look at people that as a part of the deal? Usually beyond the product or technology companies invest in people. Can the AI take this into consideration?
Yes. So it doesn't matter industry or technology you're building. What our assessment does is analyzes 10 traits, and we know based on historic performance how teams and people interact. And so yes, team is one of the biggest parts that we try our model on, and it's not specific to technology or industry.
Yeah, and I guess maybe this would be a good kind of moment, because I meant to ask this a little bit earlier, but talk to me about some of that fund thesis on what kind of opportunities you guys are looking at. Because we went in alongside you guys on Killer Creamery, which is a food CPG, which is not a typical vinyl investment. And so talk to me a little bit about what your guys' general thesis is.
Yeah, so it's changed over the years. We've kind of got it much tighter. So we do any pre-seed or seed software, consumer, or fintech deal. So those are our 3 verticals, and we've picked those for a variety of reasons, which we don't have to go into now, but it's a blend of experience, LP base, influence, like through contacts, and so anything within those 3 verticals that call it a sub $10 to $12 million valuation. So we're probably in the rounds we participate in, we're one of the first, if
Usually
not
the first,
only institutional investor.
Very cool. Yeah, and I think it's so important. Something that I kind of talk about a lot here in Boise is there's certainly a lot of regional VC firms that are very comfortable coming in and leading an A, which I mean, to some extent, who wouldn't, right? Like a company should be pretty vetted at the point where they're going for an A, or there's enough data around what they're doing that it's a lot easier to understand the opportunity. But you guys are writing checks much earlier than that. I mean, you guys might have talk to me about some of the early investing that you're doing and how either Wendell plays into that or how you guys analyze those opportunities, because early deals are really hard to look at. I mean, sometimes there's pre-revenue, a lot of them are pre-revenue, pre-product. And so how do you really understand if that's an opportunity worth investing in?
I'm glad you said that, because we see the same dynamics across Cincinnati or Kansas City, St. Louis. Like there's lots of Series A funds, but there's very few people playing in the pre-seed, especially pre-seed space, because there's a lack of data, and it's kind of I'll just wait. Like there's not super intense competition for the A. I'll pay a little more. So we just see that as a huge opportunity. We
certainly get more value. Investing in companies like that. So if they certainly do win, like your early investment, it's going to look really great on the books, right?
Yeah, and we also we deploy. We're all financial people, public markets, so we're highly diversified. And this fund will invest in 80 companies. The two things we learned through doing about 2 years of research on venture fund performance is diversification and follow-on are like paramount to not only success but repeatable success. So we're highly diversified, and then 50% of our fund is allocated to follow-on, which there's like this really magic number between 40 and 60% that funds have done in the past that have killed it.
Is that pretty typical for a lot of these funds on follow-on? Because that's a question that comes up a lot is, I think people assume that funds are raised and they throw their money kind of into these early stage companies, and then you sit back and wait and see. But a lot of times there's this big expectation that these companies are going to have to come back and make another ask at some point, whether that's a later round or some bridge financing, whatever it is, they're going to come back to their original investors and make an ask. And so is 50% kind of the average number that you see across the industry?
Average is probably closer to 25.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But what we've noticed, we haven't been doing this a super long time, but getting in early, and then to your point, why not just call up all my existing? If I want to raise $3 million, and I can do that from people that have already written me a check.
And sometimes they have options. By the way, you have to call them first.
But if like it's the easy button, and there's trust, and so we're starting to see, especially you talked about Series A being competitive, and coastal money is flooding into the middle of the country. Like it's hard. Like you can't get in deals if you aren't already an investor.
Right.
And so then there's all these insider rounds happening, pre-Series A. So we just think we're starting to notice a lot of things that it's really advantageous to already be on the cap table, and we're getting access to the best deals that no one else can.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Chris, thank you so much for flying all the way across the country to come hang out with us this week. Obviously, if you want to meet Chris, he's probably going to be at the block party tomorrow, hanging out with Matt Price and the guys from Killer Creamery. So really excited to have you here in Boise. Coming up next, we have Changing Gears with Kristen Armstrong as she shows how she successfully pivoted as an entrepreneur. But before that, a word from our sponsors.